morning and welcome to The Perspective. I'm your host, Ruby Chandler. Today we will be discussing Mark Twain's Adventures of Huckleberry Finn.
Mark Twain, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. According to The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, H.L. Mencken noted that the discovery of the classic American novel was, quote, the most stupendous event of my whole life. Ernest Hemingway declared that, quote, all modern American literature stems from this book, while T.S. Eliot called Huck, quote, one of the permanent symbolic figures of fiction, not unworthy to take the place of Ulysses, Faust, Don Quixote, Don Juan, Hamlet. The novel's preeminence derives from its wonderful imaginative recreation of boyhood adventures along the mighty Mississippi River. It inspired characterization, the author's remarkable ear for dialogue, and the book understands the development of serious underlying themes, which are the natural man versus civilized society, the evils of slavery, the innate value of dignity of human beings, the vilifying effects of convention and other topics. But most of all, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn is a wonderful story, filled with high adventure and unforgettable characters, including the great river itself, that no one who has read it will ever forget.
All right. Today on our discussion panel, we'll be talking about The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn are Professor Kent Hendry, Madam Victoria Renning, Professor James Wood, Madam Camille Ralston, and Madam Brianna Stewart. To begin the show, we will be discussing the first major theme in this book. That would be natural man versus the civilized society. Would someone like to open up the discussion? I actually brought my dictionary with me today. Well, Victoria, I would like to share with you some of the definitions. Uncivilized means barbarous, remote from settled areas, and wild. Uncivil is lacking in courtesy, ill-mannered, and impolite.
I'd like to continue that, if it's okay with everyone else. It's pretty obvious to see that Huck's struggle between his natural self and the ways of civilized society is one of the major themes in this book. Mark Twain constantly shows Huck debating over his forcibly being civilized by some of the other characters in the book, whether it be the widow or Miss Watson or even Tom in some situations. Huck tends to consider himself less of a person, if you will, or less of a good person than Tom because of his bad upbringing, because he wasn't born in a sophisticated way. Well, Huck, whenever he was taken by his father, if you'll think back, away from the widow and into the woods where he was living in an uncivilized environment, again, he thought back and he said, well, I don't really even like being civilized because of the ways that civilized is looked upon. Mark Twain, in my opinion, tends to side with the belief of being yourself. Twain shows that your mannerisms and etiquette doesn't really make you civilized, but it's the way that you feel inside and your good qualities, such as honesty, dependability, having a good conscience. The civilized people throughout this book tend to be hypocrites, if you'll notice. Mark Twain makes them out to be hypocrites, and Huck really is just true to himself the whole time.
Why don't we see what Mark Twain actually has to say about that?
Our main character represents the natural man, and he struggles throughout the story with identity as he is forcibly civilized by other characters.
All right. Would anyone else like to continue anything about that subject? I also wanted to ask, I know that in the book, Huck did not have an upbringing that majority of us living here on the planet had. But he still had such a good concept and still knew right from wrong. He did.
And if you think about it, the whole debate between whether to be civilized or whether not to be civilized, the whole condescending look that all the civilized people gave Tom, kind of symbolizes the class differences in that time, and it's still really relevant today. And I think that Mark Twain, I feel like, this is just an opinion, that he's trying to show people that just because someone doesn't grow up in a sophisticated environment or isn't raised proper, that doesn't make them uncivilized. Because he feels like that that what's in your heart and what's in your mind is better than knowing where the dessert fork goes on a table set.
All right. Well, that was a very interesting subject. Now we are going to go to a break, and I'm going to show you a little clip from tomorrow's episode.
Well, I reckon he hits me sometimes, but I don't know, I kind of like him. For a while, he came back and trying to do this. Yeah, he hit me, but I had some fun.
Now, how do you think he's going to react to the result?
I don't know if they're good. They hit me, but not hit me.
Hey, Tom, you give me your money,
Very, very sad story there. Our second thing, which would be the evils of slavery. Now, this is a very sensitive subject. Let's go ahead and watch the video from Mark Twain's perspective first. Is that all right?
Fine with me.
Close to it?
4 times than not, slavery thought it was property, and not as human beings. I used his witty intellect and his wonderful personality in order to kind of humanize him and all slaves in general.
Brianna's mirrored in action. All right, now I would like to open this up for discussion. I'd like to start. All right, go right ahead. All right, now I know that we all know Mark Twain. He's a really good author, but I have some background information on him. He grew up in Missouri, which was a slave state, and his father was a judge. But he was also traded in slaves at that time. His uncle, John Quarles, owned 20 slaves, it says, and Mark Twain witnessed the practice of slavery firsthand whenever he spent summers with his uncle. And when he was still a young boy, Mark Twain witnessed the brutal murder of a slave. So obviously he has seen all the stuff that's going on, and he's put this in his history. I reckon I had better black my face to these eastern states. Niggers are considerably better than white people, which also shows a very clear point of view of where he stands on the point of slavery. Do you have anything to say?
I would like to add a quote to that. In another quote of his, he said the skin of every human being contains a slave. What do you get out of that? Every human being contains a slave.
Well, yes, but Twain also said man is the only slave. And I think that he is very racist and the opposite of what Madame Camille said. He throws around the word nigger way too much.
Oh, I'd like to interject there. First of all, he does throw around the word nigger, and it's actually been banned in a lot of schools across America because of its racial remarks. But if you'll notice, in the introduction, whenever Twain's explaining about different dialects and things, he uses the word Negro in his note. But then whenever he gets into the talk of the characters, in order for regionalism and the dialects of their characters and to build on them and their frame of mind, he has to use the word nigger. It's very necessary in order to build the setting. And I think we could not call him racist at all, because throughout the book he is obviously, I guess you could, I don't know if you could lean towards abolitionist, but he does not agree with slavery at all.
I agree, but it should still be banned in schools.
Well, I think that we should take another break and look at some more from tomorrow's episode, because this is getting a little too controversial for the perspective.